Ambassador stood in the great council chamber and felt fear like never before. The room was massive, with walls that curved up into a dome high above. Light filtered through crystal panels, casting soft colors across the floor. Around him sat representatives from 23 different species, all part of the Galactic Council. They had gathered here on to discuss their survival. The swarm was coming. It had already destroyed 17 civilizations. The machine intelligence consumed everything in its path, turning entire planets into factories that built more killing machines. The Council had tried everything. They sent diplomats, but the swarm did not talk. They offered resources, but the swarm only took. They tried to hide, but the swarm always found them. Now they had one desperate option left. They had contacted the humans. Six Legs clicked nervously on the polished floor. His compound eyes could see the worry on every face around him. Council leader Myrazeth, who looked like a tall being made of flowing water, raised her hand for silence. "The humans have responded to our call," she said. Her voice sounded like waves on a shore. "They are sending help." "How many?" asked a being whose body was made of living crystal. "Did they send military advisors, tactical experts?" Myrazeth's form rippled with an emotion could not identify. "They are sending a fleet, 200 warships. They will arrive in 3 weeks." The chamber erupted in confusion. 200 ships. The entire Council Defense Force had only 70 ships, and most of those were designed for patrol and rescue, not warfare. How could these newcomers, these humans from a remote world, possibly have such military power? Remembered when they had first discovered Earth. The planet had shocked every scientist who studied it. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent. The native life forms competed and killed each other in an endless cycle. The oceans had creatures that could swallow a whole. The land had predators with teeth as long as his legs, and humans had evolved to survive all of it. 3 weeks, asked. Their planet is 40 light years away. How can they arrive so quickly? Nobody had an answer. The 3 weeks passed like a bad dream. The council prepared a proper greeting ceremony. They set up diplomatic quarters and arranged cultural exchange programs. They planned careful meetings to discuss strategy and coordinate their forces. Then the humans arrived, and all those plans became meaningless. Jake watched the alien space station grow larger on his ships. He was a commander in the Earth fleet, and he had seen many strange things in his career. But this was his first time meeting aliens who were not human. He felt excited and nervous at the same time. "Sir, the station is hailing us," said Lisa from the communications station. She was young, only 25, with red hair tied back in a tight bun. "They want to begin formal greeting protocols." Jake nodded. "Tell them we'll dock in 30 minutes and get Admiral Price on the line. She'll want to know we made it." Behind his ship, 199 other vessels emerged from faster-than-light travel. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and supply ships spread out in a formation that had been practiced 1,000 times. Every ship was ready for combat. Every crew member knew their job. The aliens did not know what to make of it. Stood in the docking bay and tried not to panic. The human ship was bigger than anything he had expected. It was covered in armor plating and weapons. He could see missile tubes, turrets, and laser arrays covering every surface. This was not a ship designed for exploration or trade. This was a ship built for war. The airlock opened with a hiss. 3 humans stepped out and had to stop himself from backing away. They were tall, much taller than his own species. They moved with a confidence that spoke of strength and power. Their eyes scanned the docking bay, taking in everything with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. The human in front wore a dark blue uniform with insignia did not recognize. His hair was cut short and his face showed no fear at all. This was Jake. "Greetings," said in the common trade language all council species used. "I am ambassador on behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you to our station." Jake smiled, showing his teeth. Knew this was meant to be friendly, but those teeth looked very sharp. "Thank you, Ambassador. I'm Commander Jake. This is Lieutenant Lisa and Dr. Ben. We're here to help with your swarm problem." "Your arrival is most appreciated," said carefully. "We did not expect such a large response to our call for help." "You said you were facing extinction," Jake replied. His voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "When someone says they're dying, you don't send a few advisors. You send everything you've got." Led them through the station toward the council chamber. As they walked, he noticed how the humans moved. Their steps were heavy, their bodies dense with muscle. On Earth's high-gravity world, they must have needed that strength just to stand up. Here, in the station's standard gravity, they moved with disturbing ease. Commander began, trying to choose his words carefully. "Your fleet is quite impressive, but I must ask, how prepared are you for actual combat? The swarm is unlike any enemy you have faced." Jake stopped walking. He turned to look at with those strange, forward-facing eyes that marked humans as predators. "Ambassador, Earth has been at war for most of its history. We've fought each other, our environment, diseases, and anything else that threatened us. We've survived ice ages, asteroids, and our own worst impulses. We're still here because we learned how to fight and win." "But your species is so young," protested. "You have only been in space for 200 years. Lisa spoke up for the first time. "Ambassador, we had nuclear weapons before we had satellites. We had guns before we had printing presses. Humans have always been very good at two things, surviving and fighting. Sometimes those are the same thing." They reached the council chamber. The other representatives waited inside, arranged in their seats around the great circle. Myrazeth stood at the center, her watery form shimmering with anxiety. Jake walked to the middle of the floor. He did not seem intimidated by the dozens of alien eyes watching him. "Council leader, members of the Galactic Council, thank you for calling us. We've reviewed the data you sent about the swarm. We have a plan." "So quickly?" asked. "You have only just arrived." "We analyzed the information during our journey," Jake said. He pulled out a small device and projected a holographic map into the air. "The swarm is operating on predictable patterns. They prioritize resource-rich systems and avoid heavily defended positions. We can use that." Watched as Jake outlined a strategy that made his blood run cold. The humans wanted to attack, not defend, not evacuate, not negotiate. They wanted to take the fight directly to the swarm's forces. "This is madness," he whispered. Jake heard him. "Maybe, but it's the kind of madness that keeps you alive. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense." Admiral Corinne Price appeared on the holographic display, broadcasting from her flagship. She was older than Jake, with gray in her dark hair and lines around her eyes. "Council members, I know our methods might seem aggressive to you, but we've studied warfare for thousands of years. Trust us. We know what we're doing." Myrazeth looked around at her fellow council members. She saw fear, doubt, and a small spark of hope. "Very well, Commander Admiral Price, we will trust you, but please understand we are not warriors. We do not know your ways." Jake's expression softened slightly. "We understand, Council Leader. That's why we're here. You focus on keeping your people safe. Let us handle the fighting. That's what we do best." As the meeting continued, realized something that chilled him to his core. The humans were not here to advise or assist. They were here to wage war, and they seemed to think that was perfectly normal. The Joint Command Center orbited like a small moon. Inside, humans and aliens worked side by side, though the word "worked" meant very different things to each species. The council representatives moved carefully, spoke softly, and took frequent breaks for meditation and rest. The humans never seemed to stop. Dr. Ben sat across from three scientists in one of the research labs. He was excited to share information about Earth, though he was starting to realize his enthusiasm was making his alien colleagues uncomfortable. "So your world has ice at both poles?" asked one of whose name Ben could not pronounce correctly. "And yet life thrives in between." "Oh yes," Ben said, pulling up images on his. "Earth is actually pretty mild right now. We're in an interglacial period. About 20,000 years ago, ice sheets covered most of the northern continents, and that's happened multiple times in our history." They looked at each other with their compound eyes. One of them spoke carefully. "Your species survived these ice ages." "Well, our ancestors did. Humans are pretty good at adapting. When it got cold, we learned to make fire, build shelters, and sew clothes from animal skins." Ben scrolled through more images. "Here's a woolly mammoth. Humans hunted these. They were about 4 meters tall and weighed 6 tons. "You hunted them." This voice rose several octaves. "How?" "Spears, mostly. Sometimes we'd drive them off cliffs. It was dangerous, but one mammoth could feed a tribe for weeks." Ben noticed their horrified expressions and tried to be reassuring. "Don't worry, they're extinct now. We don't have to hunt them anymore." "You made them extinct." "Well, climate change did most of it. We just helped the process along." Ben realized he was not making things better. "Look, the point is, humans are survivors. We do what we need to do." Across the station, Admiral Karen Price reviewed tactical displays with and other council military coordinators. The meeting was not going well. "You want to divide your fleet." His crystalline body flashed with colors that indicated confusion. "That violates every principle of defensive strategy." Karen leaned back in her chair. She was tired but patient. "Defensive strategy is what got you into this mess. The swarm knows you'll cluster your forces to protect civilians, so they just go around you and hit undefended targets. But if we divide our forces, we are weaker in each location," argued. "We're not weaker, we're more flexible." Karen pulled up a star map. "Look, the swarm moves in predictable patterns. They need raw materials, so they target mining colonies and industrial worlds. We put small, fast groups at each of these locations. When the swarm shows up, we hit them hard and fast, then retreat before they can bring their full strength to bear." "This sounds very risky," said. "War is risky," Karen replied. "But sitting still and waiting to die is not a strategy. It's just slow suicide." Another council member, a being made of interlocking plates that resembled armor, spoke up. "Admiral, your tactics seem to rely heavily on aggressive action. Do humans ever consider peaceful solutions?" Karen was quiet for a moment. She thought about how to explain Earth's history without frightening everyone in the room. "We consider peace all the time. We want peace. But sometimes the only way to get peace is to fight for it. The swarm doesn't want to negotiate. They want to consume. You can't reason with that." In the training center, Lieutenant Amy was giving a demonstration to a group of council soldiers. These were the closest thing the peaceful species had to warriors, and even they seemed unprepared for what they were about to see. Amy was small for a human, barely 160 centimeters tall, but she moved with a speed and precision that made the aliens nervous. She wore light training gear and carried no weapons. "Combat is about 3 things," she explained. "Speed, strength, and awareness. You need to see the threat, move to counter it, and strike with enough force to eliminate it." A soldier raised one of its limbs. "But surely the goal is to avoid violence." "The goal is to survive," Amy corrected. "Sometimes that means avoiding violence. Sometimes it means ending a threat before it ends you." She gestured to her assistant. "Throw the training knife." The assistant tossed a rubber knife toward Amy. She moved almost too fast to see, catching it out of the air and revering her grip in one smooth motion. The aliens gasped. "On Earth, humans are not the biggest predators. We're not the fastest. We're not the strongest, but we're and we never give up." Amy demonstrated several combat moves, each one quick and efficient. "We learned to use tools, work together, and outlast everything that tried to kill us." One of the council soldiers, a being with 4 arms, asked, Do all humans train for combat? Not all, but many. We have something called martial arts. It's combat training that's also a sport and a philosophy. Some humans study it their whole lives. Amy smiled. On Earth, even our entertainment involves fighting. We have boxing, wrestling, martial arts competitions. We play games where we simulate combat. This is your entertainment. The four-armed being seemed shocked. You recreate violence for pleasure. Amy thought about how to explain. We're not violent because we enjoy hurting people. We're prepared for violence because our history taught us we need to be. Earth is a dangerous place. If you're not ready to fight, you don't survive long. In the medical bay, Lisa was talking with a doctor about human physiology. The doctor kept making concerned clicking sounds as Lisa explained various human biological features. Your bones are quite dense, the doctor observed, looking at a scan of Lisa's skeleton. And your muscle tissue has much more tensile strength than any species we have encountered. That's because of Earth's gravity, Lisa explained. We need strong bones and muscles just to stand up. Plus, we evolved as endurance hunters. We can run for hours without stopping. Hours? The doctor's antennae twitched. That seems impossible. Humans used to hunt animals by chasing them until they collapse from exhaustion. We can't run as fast as many animals, but we can keep going long after they tire out. It's called persistence hunting. Lisa pulled up more data. We also have really good temperature regulation. We can survive in extreme heat and cold that would kill most species. The doctor examined the information with growing concern. Your planet sounds very hostile. We think it's pretty nice, Lisa said with a laugh. Sure, we have hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, and droughts. But we also have beaches, mountains, forests, and cities. It's home. You list natural disasters as if they are normal, the doctor said. They are normal. On Earth, you learn to deal with disasters because they're part of life. Buildings collapse, so we build them stronger. Diseases spread, so we develop medicine. Predators attack, so we learn to defend ourselves. Lisa's expression turned serious. Every human alive today is the descendant of survivors. Our ancestors lived through everything Earth could throw at them. That's why we're still here. Back in the command center was reading reports about human history. What he found disturbed him deeply. The humans had fought thousands of wars. They had developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. They had survived plagues that killed millions. They had built civilizations, watched them fall, and built new ones. One section particularly troubled him. It was about something humans called the World Wars. In less than 50 years, humans had fought two massive conflicts that killed over 100 million of their own kind. And yet their civilization did not collapse. They rebuilt, learned, and became stronger. Myrazeth appeared beside him, her watery form casting ripples of light across his workstation. Troubling reading, Ambassador. They nearly destroyed themselves, said quietly. Multiple times. How are they even still alive? Perhaps that is why they are so prepared for war, Myrazeth said. They have been fighting since they first existed. It is all they know. Does that not frighten you? Asked. We have invited predators to save us from machines. What happens when the machines are gone? Myrazeth was silent for a long moment. I have been speaking with Admiral Price. She told me something interesting. She said humans divide their history into two categories, peacetime and wartime. They understand the difference. They do not want eternal war. But they are so good at it, protested. Yes, and perhaps that is what we need right now. Someone who understands war well enough to end it. An alarm suddenly blared through the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. A voice came over the communication system, speaking in urgent tones. Swarm fleet detected. Multiple contacts. Heading for the mining colony on Helios 3. Felt his legs go weak. Helios 3 had over 1 million civilians. It was a major industrial center, completely undefended except for a few patrol ships. Admiral Price's voice cut through the panic. "All human ships, this is Price. Battle formation Delta. We move in 5 minutes. Council forces maintain defensive positions around. We'll handle this." 5 minutes. The humans were going to engage the swarm in 5 minutes. The Council forces would need hours to mobilize, and even then, they would move cautiously, carefully. The humans were going to attack. Captain Danny Foster gripped the arms of his command chair as his destroyer, the Vigilant, dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The Helios system materialized on and with it, the nightmare everyone had been dreading. The swarm had arrived in force. 50 ships, maybe more, all angular and dark, covered in weapons and armor. They moved in perfect coordination, like a school of metallic fish, closing in on the mining colony that orbited Helios 3. Danny could see the civilian transports trying to evacuate, small and helpless against the approaching swarm. "All stations report," Danny called out. His crew responded instantly. Weapons ready, shields ready, engines ready. They had drilled for this 1,000 times. "Sir, Admiral Price is ordering all ships to engage," his communications officer reported. "We're to hit them fast and break their formation." Danny allowed himself a tight smile. Fast was what destroyers did best. "Helm, take us in, full speed, target their lead ship." The Vigilant surged forward. Around it, 19 other human destroyers did the same, forming a spearhead that drove straight into the swarm fleet. Behind them came the cruisers and carriers, moving to support positions. On the command station, watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. He could not believe what he was seeing. The humans were outnumbered. The swarm ships were larger, and yet the humans were attacking directly, showing no caution at all. "This is suicide," said beside him. "They will all die." "Maybe," Myrazeth said quietly. "Or maybe we are about to learn something about humans we did not know." The first missiles launched from human ships, streaking across the dark space like falling stars. The swarm ships returned fire, their plasma cannons creating brilliant flashes of deadly energy. 2 human destroyers took direct hits. One exploded immediately. The other spun out of control, venting atmosphere and debris. But the humans did not slow down. Danny felt the Vigilant shake as enemy fire grazed their shields. The lights flickered. An alarm screamed about damage to the port side. He ignored it. "Weapons, fire everything we have." The Vigilant unleashed its full arsenal. Missiles, rounds, laser beams, all converging on a single swarm cruiser. The enemy ship's shields held for 3 seconds, then collapsed. The armor beneath cracked and split. Atmosphere exploded outward as the ship died. "Target destroyed," his weapons officer reported. "Acquiring next target." "Negative," Danny said. "Ram position full speed ahead." His crew turned to stare at him. Ramming was a last resort, a desperate move when all weapons failed. They had plenty of weapons left. Danny met their eyes calmly. "The swarm learns from every engagement. They've never faced ramming attacks. Let's teach them something new. Execute." The Vigilant's engines roared to maximum power. The ship accelerated toward a massive swarm carrier, closing the distance in seconds. The enemy ship tried to turn, but it was too slow, too large. Watched in horror as the human destroyer crashed into the swarm carrier like a hammer striking glass. The impact created a brilliant explosion that lit up the entire battlefield. When the light faded, both ships were gone. "No," whispered, "they could have retreated. Why did they not retreat?" "Because that carrier was about to fire on the civilian transports," Lisa said. She stood next to him, her face pale but her voice steady. "Captain Foster saved 10,000 civilians. He knew what he was doing." In the chaos of battle, Lieutenant Kate led her Marines toward a damaged swarm ship. Their assault shuttle had been hit during the approach, and now they were doing this the hard way. Kate and her team wore sealed combat suits, magnetic boots keeping them attached to the shuttle's hull as it drifted through space. 30 seconds to contact, her sergeant called over the radio. Remember your training. These things don't feel pain, don't get scared, and don't surrender. You put them down hard or they put you down. Kate checked her rifle one more time. It was loaded with armor-piercing rounds designed to punch through mechanical systems. Around her, 15 Marines prepared their own weapons. They had trained for boarding actions, but this was their first real combat. The shuttle crashed into the swarm ship's hull. Magnetic clamps locked them in place. Kate's team immediately started cutting through the outer armor with plasma torches. Sparks flew in the vacuum, creating strange patterns of light. "Hull breach in 10 seconds, someone reported. Kate positioned herself at the front. "Remember, we go in fast, clear every room, watch your corners, stay alive." The armor gave way. Kate dropped through the hole into the swarm ship's interior. Emergency lights cast everything in a red glow. The corridor was filled with floating debris and severed cables, and waiting for them were the swarm's defenders. They looked like spiders made of metal, each one the size of a large dog. They had too many legs, too many sharp edges, and they moved with terrible speed. Kate opened fire immediately, her rifle barking in the thin atmosphere. The first machine exploded into fragments. The second lunged at her. She dodged, fired again, and watched it tumble past her into the darkness. Her Marines spread out, covering each other as they advanced. The swarm machines kept coming, pouring from side passages and doorways. The fighting was brutal and close. No tactics, no strategy, just survival measured in seconds. Kate's rifle ran dry. She dropped it and drew her sidearm, firing at a machine that was climbing the wall toward her. It fell, but two more took its place. One of her Marines screamed over the radio as a machine tore through his suit. His squad mates pulled him back and sealed the breach with emergency foam. "Keep moving," Kate shouted. "We need to reach the reactor core." They fought their way through 3 more corridors. Every meter was paid for in sweat and blood. 2 Marines were wounded. 1 was dead. But they kept going because that was what humans did. They kept going until the job was done or they could not move anymore. Above the planet, pilot Chris Martinez flew his fighter through a storm of enemy fire. His squadron had launched from a carrier 10 minutes ago with orders to protect the evacuation transports. Now they were outnumbered 3-1, and the odds kept getting worse. "Break left," his wingman called. Chris threw his fighter into a sharp turn, feeling the G-forces press him into his seat. A swarm missile screamed past, missing by meters. "I see him," Chris said calmly. He reversed his turn, bringing his fighter around in a loop that should have been impossible. But human pilots trained in high-G simulators that would kill most species. This was just another day of work. He locked onto the enemy fighter that had fired at him. His thumb pressed the trigger. Laser fire stitched across space, tearing into the swarm ship's engines. It exploded in a ball of expanding gas and metal. "Splash 1, Chris reported. "Anyone else need help?" "I got 2 on my tail," another pilot called. "Can't shake them." "I'm coming." Chris pushed his engines to maximum. His fighter was not designed to operate at this speed in an atmosphere, but space had no speed limits. He caught up to his squadron mate and the 2 enemy fighters chasing her. But Chris did not fire his weapons. Instead, he angled his fighter down toward the planet's atmosphere and accelerated even more. "Follow me," he ordered his squadron mate. They dove toward Helios 3, the 2 swarm fighters right behind them. The planet's atmosphere began to glow around Chris's fighter as friction built up. Heat washed over his cockpit. Alarms screamed about critical temperature levels. The swarm fighters followed, their programming not understanding the danger. They entered the atmosphere at orbital speeds, and the physics of re-entry took over. The heat built to levels their systems could not handle. They started to break apart, pieces burning away like shooting stars. Chris pulled up at the last safe moment, his fighter's hull glowing red-hot but intact. His squadron mate followed him. Behind them, the two swarm fighters became nothing but ash and memories. "Nice trick," his wingman said breathlessly. "Something I learned flying through Earth's atmosphere," Chris replied. "You can't do that on most planets. Too gentle, but Earth will kill you if you're not careful. Makes for good combat tactics." The battle raged for 2 hours. By human standards, that was a long engagement. By Council standards, it was impossibly brutal. The swarm lost 31 ships. The humans lost 17 destroyers, 5 cruisers, and 2 carriers. Thousands of humans died in those 2 hours. But they won. The swarm fleet retreated, unable to break through the human lines. The civilian transports escaped, carrying over 1 million refugees to safety. In the aftermath, Kate pulled herself out of the swarm ship she had been fighting through. Her suit was damaged in a dozen places. Her body ached from bruises and minor wounds. 3 of her Marines were dead. 5 more were wounded, but they had completed their mission. The swarm ship's reactor was set to overload, ensuring it could never be repaired. Danny Foster never made it out. His ship was gone, nothing left but a debris field and radiation signatures. He died doing what he thought was necessary. His crew died with him. Chris Martinez landed his fighter on a carrier, its hull scorched black from atmospheric re-entry. His hands shook as he climbed out of the cockpit, not from fear, but from exhaustion and adrenaline crash. He had lost 4 pilots from his squadron. Good people, friends, gone forever. On the command station, stared at the casualty reports. The numbers seemed impossible. The humans had lost so many, and yet they were already preparing for the next battle, already repairing their ships, already training new pilots and Marines to replace those who had fallen. "How can they keep fighting after losing so many?" he asked Myrazev. The council leader's watery form was still, reflecting the lights around her. "Perhaps because they have always fought, perhaps because they do not know how to do anything else." Admiral Price appeared on the communication screen. Her face showed exhaustion, but her voice was strong. "Council leader, the colony is secure. Casualties were acceptable given the circumstances. We'll need 3 days to repair and rearm, then we can respond to the next swarm incursion." Acceptable could not help himself. "You lost thousands of your people. How is that acceptable?" Karen looked at him with eyes that had seen too much war. "Because millions of your people are still alive, Ambassador. Because we accomplished the mission. Because that's what victory costs. You asked for our help. This is what help looks like." 3 months had passed since the battle at Helios 3. 3 months of constant fighting, of victories and losses, of watching humans throw themselves against the swarm again and again. The Council had learned many things about their allies from Earth, but the most surprising discovery was that humans could feel pain. Lisa sat alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. She had not slept properly in days. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the faces of her crew. The Vigilant had been her first assignment after the academy. Captain Foster had taught her everything about being a communications officer. Now he was gone, along with everyone else she had served with. She heard footsteps behind her but did not turn around. A moment later, settled his 6 legs on the deck beside her. The ambassador had changed over the past 3 months. He no longer flinched when humans entered a room. He had learned to read human expressions, at least a little. "You are in pain," said. It was not a question. "Yeah," Lisa said quietly, "I guess I am." "I did not understand before that humans could grieve. You all seem so strong, so ready to fight. I thought perhaps you did not feel lost the way we do." Lisa laughed, but it was a sad sound. "We feel everything. Maybe that's why we're so good at fighting. We know what we're fighting for. We know what we'll lose if we fail." "But you lose so much anyway," said. "Every battle more humans die. How do you continue?" "Because if we stop, everyone dies, not just humans, everyone." Lisa finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was steady. "You asked us for help, we gave it. This is what help costs." Across the station, Major Sam prepared for another mission. He was special operations, trained for the jobs that no one else wanted to do. Tonight, he and his team were going deep behind enemy lines to sabotage a swarm construction facility. It was dangerous work, the kind where you might not come back. His team of 12 gathered in the briefing room. They were quiet, focused, checking their equipment one last time. Sam had been doing this for 8 years. He had led over 50 missions. He had lost count of how many teammates had died under his command. "Listen up," Sam said. "This facility is building new swarm ships. Our job is to blow it up and get out. We go in quiet, set the charges, and leave. If we get spotted, we fight our way out. Everyone understand?" The team nodded. They understood. They always understood. That was what made them good at their jobs. A young soldier, barely 20 years old, raised his hand. "Sir, what if we can't all get out?" Sam met his eyes. "Then the ones who make it finish the mission. The swarm facility gets destroyed no matter what. That's the job." It was a hard answer, but it was the only honest one. Special operations meant accepting that some missions cost everything. You went anyway because the mission mattered more than any one person. The mission went wrong from the start. The swarm had upgraded their security. What should have been a quiet infiltration turned into a running battle through dark corridors filled with enemy machines. Sam's team fought their way to the reactor core, losing 3 people along the way. They set the charges. Sam checked the timer. 20 minutes until detonation. More than enough time to evacuate if everything went perfectly, but nothing was going perfectly tonight. "We've got a problem," one of his team called. "The main exit is blocked. Swarm reinforcements are pouring in." Sam made a decision, the kind of decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Secondary exit. Move now." They ran. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. 2 more team members fell, buying time for the others to escape. Sam kept running, kept leading, kept pushing forward even as his heart broke for the people he was leaving behind. They made it to their extraction ship with 5 minutes to spare. Sam watched the facility explode behind them, a brilliant flash that meant the mission was complete. He had started with 12 people. He was returning with 7. On the command station, Admiral Price reviewed casualty reports in her private quarters. The numbers were getting worse. Over the past month, the swarm had adapted to human tactics. They were learning, changing, becoming more dangerous. Human losses were climbing. She had started this campaign with 200 ships and 40,000 crew members. Now she had 130 ships and 26,000 crew. The math was simple and terrible. At this rate, the human fleet would be destroyed before the swarm was defeated. Someone knocked on her door. "Come in," Corinne called. Myerzeth flowed through the doorway, her watery form casting ripples of light. "I hope I am not disturbing you, Admiral." "Not at all, Council Leader. What can I do for you?" "I wish to speak with you about a difficult topic," Myerzeth said. "There is growing concern among the Council about your tactics, specifically your use of quantum weapons." Corinne tensed. 2 weeks ago, she had authorized a quantum bomb strike on a swarm stronghold. The weapon had destroyed the enemy position completely, but it had also violated several Council regulations about prohibited weapons. The Council had been debating the decision ever since. "The stronghold was going to launch an attack on 3 civilian worlds," Corinne said carefully. "We didn't have time for a conventional assault. The quantum bomb was the only option." "But such weapons are forbidden," Myerzeth said. "They cause terrible destruction. They violate the principles of civilized warfare." "Civilized warfare," Corinne repeated the word slowly. "Council Leader, with all respect, there's no such thing. War is ugly, it's brutal, it's people dying in horrible ways. You can make rules about it, try to limit the damage, but at the end of the day, war is about survival. The swarm isn't following your rules. Why should we? Because we must be better than our enemies, Myarazeth insisted. If we become monsters to fight monsters, what have we become? Karen stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. You know what humans say? We say we don't have the luxury of clean hands. It means sometimes you have to do things you're not proud of, things that will keep you up at night, but you do them anyway because the alternative is worse. Is it truly? Myarazeth asked. Or is that simply what you tell yourselves to justify terrible actions? Maybe, Karen admitted. Maybe we are justifying it. But I look at those 3 civilian worlds still alive, still safe, and I sleep a little better knowing I made the right choice, even if it was the wrong thing to do. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert, an urgent message from the outer colonies. The swarm was attacking multiple locations simultaneously. They needed help immediately. Corinne pulled up the tactical display. The situation was bad. 5 colonies under attack, spread across 3 star systems. She did not have enough ships to defend them all. We have to make a choice, she said quietly. We can save 3 of the colonies if we move fast. The other 2 will fall before we can get there. Myarazeth stared at the display in horror. You mean we must abandon 2 colonies, millions of civilians? Unless you have a better idea, Karen said. Her voice was harsh, but not from anger, from pain. This is war, Council Leader. This is what it really looks like. Not the sanitized version you imagine. The real thing where every choice is bad and you pick the least terrible option. Myarazeth was silent for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. Which 3 can we save? The ones with the largest populations. We save the most people we can. And the other 2? We send evacuation ships and hope some civilians can escape before the swarm arrives. The decision was made, ships were dispatched, and 2 colonies were left to their fate. 3 days later, Lisa watched the news reports with growing despair. The 2 abandoned colonies had fallen exactly as predicted. Millions dead. Entire populations wiped out. The council representatives were calling for investigations, demanding to know why more was not done. Found her in the observation deck again. He had learned this was where she came when things were difficult. It was the right choice, he said without preamble. Admiral Price saved more lives than she lost. I understand that now. Do you? Lisa asked. Because I'm not sure I do. We're supposed to be the good guys, right? We're supposed to save people. But we keep making these impossible choices and people keep dying, and I don't know anymore if we're helping or just making everything worse. You are helping, said firmly. Before you came, we had no hope. The swarm was consuming everything. Now, for the first time, we are fighting back. We are winning battles. Yes, the cost is terrible, but the alternative was extinction. Is survival worth it if we become monsters? You are not monsters, said. I thought you were at first. I saw your weapons, your tactics, your willingness to fight, and I was terrified. But I have watched you for 3 months now. I have seen humans grieve. I have seen them sacrifice themselves to save aliens they barely know. I have seen them carry impossible burdens and keep going anyway. You are not monsters. You are the bravest beings I have ever known. Lisa looked at him, and for the first time in days she smiled a little. Thanks, Ambassador. I needed to hear that. You know what I have learned about humans, continued. You feel everything more deeply than we do. Joy, sadness, anger, love. You experience life with an intensity that frightens us. Perhaps that is why you fight so hard, because you know exactly what you are fighting for. Across the station, Admiral Price sat alone with her thoughts. She had made the hard choice. She would make it again if necessary. But that did not make it easy. That did not stop her from thinking about the millions who had died because she could not save them. Her door chimed. Sam entered, his face showing the weight of his recent mission. Admiral, we need to talk about the next operation. Karen looked up at him and saw a reflection of her own exhaustion. "How are you holding up, Major?" "Same as everyone else," Sam said. "One day at a time, one mission at a time." "I lost 5 of your people on that last mission, didn't I?" "Yes, ma'am, but we completed the objective. The facility is destroyed." "Was it worth it?" Sam was quiet for a moment. "I don't know any more, Admiral. I used to be sure. I used to think every mission, every sacrifice was worth it. Now I just hope it matters." "It matters," Karen said. "It has to matter, because if it doesn't, then we've lost more than battles. We've lost ourselves." They sat together in silence, 2 soldiers carrying burdens that no one should have to carry, fighting a war that no one wanted, making choices that would haunt them forever. But they would keep going, because that was what humans did. They kept going until the job was done or they could not go anymore. And the swarm was still out there, waiting. 6 months after the first battle, the human fleet and their council allies prepared for what would be the final confrontation. Intelligence had located the swarm's central intelligence core, a massive installation deep in what used to be the home system. They had been the first species the swarm consumed. Now their world was nothing but a factory, churning out weapons and warships. Admiral Karen Price stood in the command center, looking at the tactical display. The swarm's core world was heavily defended. Orbital platforms, automated defense systems, and over 200 warships. Her fleet had grown back to 160 ships, but even that would not be enough. "The Council is contributing 60 ships to the assault," reported. His crystalline form flashed with determination. "We have learned much from you, Admiral. We may not fight as well as humans, but we will fight." Karen nodded. "Thank you, every ship matters." Entered the command center, followed by Myrazeth. The council leader's watery form seemed more solid than usual, as if she had found new strength somewhere. "Ambassador, council leader," Karen greeted them. "We're finalizing the battle plan." "We have a request," Myrazeth said. "We wish to address the combined fleet before the battle. All species, human and council alike. Will you permit this?" Karen considered. They were about to go into the most dangerous battle of the war, but maybe that was exactly when people needed to hear from their leaders. "Of course, I'll set up the broadcast." An hour later, every ship in the fleet received the same transmission. Myrazeth appeared on their screens, with Karen standing beside her. "People of the Galactic Council," Myrazeth began, "and our friends from Earth, today we face our greatest challenge. The swarm has taken everything from us, our homes, our families, our hope, but they did not take one thing, they did not take our will to survive." She paused, her form rippling with emotion. 6 months ago we called for help. We expected advisors, perhaps a few ships. Instead, the humans brought us an army. They brought us warriors who knew how to fight. But more importantly, they brought us something we had forgotten. They brought us courage. Karen watched the faces on the human and alien alike, all listening, all preparing for what was to come. "The humans have taught us many things," Myrazeth continued. "They have shown us that peace is not the absence of conflict. It is something you must fight to preserve. They have shown us that sometimes survival requires sacrifice. And they have shown us that strength comes not from violence, but from the willingness to stand against darkness even when victory seems impossible. Today we fight together, human and council, warrior and pacifist, predator and prey. We fight not because we enjoy war, but because we must. And when this battle is done, we will build a future where such wars are never needed again. This I promise you." The transmission ended. Karen looked at Myrazeth with new respect. "That was a good speech, council leader." "I learned from the best," Myrazeth replied, gesturing to Karen. "Now let us finish this." The fleet entered the system in waves. Council ships formed defensive screens, while human vessels pushed forward into the teeth of the swarm's defenses. The battle began immediately, brutal and desperate from the first moment. Lieutenant Kate led her Marines onto another swarm ship, her third boarding action of the day. She had learned hard lessons over the past 6 months. She moved with economy now, wasting no motion, no ammunition. Every shot counted. Every second mattered. Her team cleared the ship methodically, room by room, deck by deck. They had done this so many times it was almost routine. Almost. Because the swarm kept learning, kept adapting. The machines they fought today were smarter, faster, more deadly than the ones from 6 months ago. Core reactor ahead, her sergeant reported. Heavy resistance. When isn't there, Kate said. Push through, we don't have time for careful. They charged the final corridor. Machines poured out to meet them. The fighting was savage, close-quarters combat where mistakes meant death. Kate lost 4 Marines in 30 seconds, but they reached the reactor. They set the charges, and they ran. The ship exploded behind them as their shuttle pulled away. Kate counted her remaining team. 11 left from the 20 she had started with. The math was simple and terrible, but the mission was complete. In the space above the swarm's core world, pilot Chris Martinez flew his fighter through a storm of enemy fire that seemed impossible to survive. His squadron was down to 6 ships from the original 12. They were protecting a cruiser that had taken heavy damage and was trying to retreat. "We need more time," the cruiser captain called over the radio. "Our engines are damaged, 5 more minutes." "You've got it," Chris replied, though he had no idea how he was going to give them 5 minutes when the swarm was throwing everything they had at this position. He pushed his fighter to its limits, dodging, weaving, firing whenever he saw a target. His wingman exploded beside him, struck by a missile he never saw coming. Then there were 5 ships left. Then 4. 3 minutes, the cruiser captain called. Chris's fighter took a hit, alarm screamed. His shield was down, armor was breached. He was leaking fuel and oxygen. His fighter was dying around him. "This is Martinez," he said calmly. "My bird is done. Tell my family I love them." He turned his dying fighter toward the largest concentration of enemy ships and pushed his engines to maximum. If he was going down, he was taking some of them with him. "Negative, Martinez," a new voice cut in. "Jake, the commander, had been leading the assault on the core installation itself. Your squadron has new orders. Break off and retreat. We're going in." Chris watched as 3 human destroyers, all damaged, all barely holding together, formed up and drove straight toward the core world's orbital defenses. They were not trying to fight. They were trying to die in the right place. The destroyers crashed into the defense platforms like meteors. The explosions were massive, tearing holes in the swarm's defensive network. It was the opening the fleet needed. "All ships," Admiral Price's voice came over every channel. "Push through now, hit the core." The entire fleet surged forward, council and human ships alike, driving into the gap that Jake and his ships had created with their sacrifice. The swarm tried to close the breach, but it was too late. Admiral Price led the final assault personally, her flagship at the front of the formation. She had started this war from the safety of a command station. She would not end it that way. "Target the core intelligence nexus," she ordered. "Everything we have. 1 shot, make it count." Every ship in the fleet fired at the same target. Missiles, beams, rounds, everything. The combined firepower was like a miniature star igniting in the darkness. The swarm's core installation shook, cracked, and began to break apart. "Direct hit," the weapons officer reported. "The core is destroyed." For a moment the battle continued. Then one by one the swarm ships stopped moving. They hung in space, dark and silent. The intelligence that had controlled them was gone. They were just machines now, empty husks without purpose. The war was over. In the aftermath, the fleet regrouped. Karen looked at the casualty reports with a heavy heart. 60 ships lost, 20,000 crew members dead. Jake was among them, along with countless others who had fought bravely and died hard. But the swarm was defeated. The nightmare was over. A week later, the council held a ceremony to honor the human dead. They wanted to create a memorial, to name stations and planets after the fallen heroes, to make sure their sacrifice would never be forgotten. Karen stood before the assembled council representatives and declined their offer. "With respect, council leader, we don't need memorials," she said. "We were just doing what needed to be done. The real memorial is the peace you'll build now. The civilizations that will thrive because they're not afraid anymore. That's what my people died for. That's what matters." Stepped forward. He had changed so much over the past 6 months. He no longer feared humans. He understood them. "Admiral Price, you say you were just doing what needed to be done. But I must tell you something. When we first met, I thought humans were monsters. I saw your weapons, your tactics, your casual acceptance of violence, and I was terrified. But I was wrong." He gestured to the assembled council members. "We have learned that humans are not monsters. You are guardians. You have the capacity for terrible violence, yes, but you also have the capacity for incredible compassion. You feel loss as deeply as any species. You grieve your fallen. You sacrifice for strangers. You fight not because you love war, but because someone has to stand against the darkness." "We called you," Myrazeth added. "We meant it as a description of your home planet, but now we understand it means something more. You come from a world that taught you to survive at any cost, to never give up, to keep fighting even when hope seems lost. That is what makes you special. That is what saved us." Karen felt tears threatening but held them back. "Thank you, council leader, but understand something. We're not heroes. We're just people who got dealt a tough hand and learned to play it well. Any species that went through what we did would have learned the same lessons." "Perhaps," Myrazeth said, "but you went through it first, and when we needed you, you were ready." The council voted unanimously to offer humanity a permanent seat among them, not as advisors or helpers, but as equals. The humans had earned their place through sacrifice and blood. 6 months later, construction began on a new station at the edge of the former war zone. It was called New Hope, and it would serve as a symbol of cooperation between humans and the council species, a place where different worlds could come together to build something better. Lisa transferred to the new station as Chief Communications Officer. She stood in the observation deck, looking out at the construction ships working day and night. The station was taking shape slowly, piece by piece, just like the piece they were building. Joined her as he often did. They had become friends over the long months of war. "Do you think it will last?" he asked. "This peace we have bought?" "I don't know," Lisa said honestly. "Peace is harder than war in some ways. It requires constant work, constant vigilance. But we'll try. That's all anyone can do." "The council wants me to establish a cultural exchange program," said, "to help our species understand each other better. I think it is a good idea." "I agree. Understanding prevents fear, and fear leads to conflict." "Would you help me develop this program?" asked. "You understand both humans and council species. You could bridge the gap." Lisa smiled. "I'd be honored." On Earth, Lieutenant Kate returned home after 8 months of war. She stood in a park in the city where she grew up and felt the gravity, the real Earth gravity, pulling at her. It felt good to be home. Her family was there waiting, and she hugged them tightly. They did not ask about the war. They could see it in her eyes, in the way she moved. The experiences she had gone through had changed her forever. But she was alive, and the galaxy was safe. That had to be enough. Back at the New Hope station, Admiral Karen Price prepared to retire from active service. She had decided to stay in council space, to help build the peace she had fought for. It seemed like the right thing to do. Before she left her flagship for the last time, she recorded a message to be sent back to Earth. "To whoever finds this," she said to the camera, "my name is Admiral Karen Price, and I want to tell you something. We came to this part of space because aliens asked for help. They didn't know what to expect. They got us. Humans. warriors from a planet that tried to kill us for millions of years. They were afraid of us at first. I don't blame them. We're good at violence. We're good at war. But here's what I learned. Being good at something doesn't mean you have to be defined by it. Humans can fight like demons when we need to. But we can also build, create, and protect. We choose what we are. The aliens thought we were monsters at first. Now they call us guardians. Not because we're perfect, but because we're willing to stand up when others can't. Because we learned how to survive on a world that gave us no mercy, and that made us strong enough to help others. Remember this, our capacity for violence doesn't make us evil, it makes us capable. What we do with that capability defines us. We chose to help. We chose to protect. We chose to be better than the world that made us. They didn't expect us. Now they can't imagine life without us. And honestly, I think that's a pretty good legacy. The message ended. Karen smiled and walked off her ship for the last time, ready to start building instead of destroying. The fleet had answered the call. They had fought a war no one else could fight. They had paid a terrible price, but they had won. And in winning, they had proven something important. That strength used wisely is protection. That warriors can be guardians. And that sometimes, the scariest people in the galaxy are exactly the ones you need on your side. The galaxy would remember.